we understand that we've got a big challenge ahead of us coming up with the Eagles. So, but we sure appreciate everybody involved in helping us get to that point. It always starts with the Hunt family and the great job in which they do of supporting and giving us opportunities to be successful. Mark Donovan, who doesn't get he doesn't get a whole lot of credit from anybody, but he's the president of the organization and really does a ton for the organization in so many different ways, and helps bring this community in to be a part of what we do. And and then Brett Veach for the great job that he and his crew do with bringing players in, and then the coaches and players. I mentioned this last night. It takes everybody to get to this point. I say this because we're 19 games into this thing, and it's not about one person or one player or one coach. It's about everybody. It's everybody coming together, and there's no more important game than the one we're going to play in that we need that joint effort. And the other team that we're playing, the Eagles, they're there for a reason, is because they're a good football team. And so we've got to make sure that we keep everything together and work and get a nice plan together for this group. Anyways, with that, time's yours.
Let's start with Sarin. Go ahead, Sarin.
Coach, the short yardage, package that you guys had that you ran on that first 4th down and everything. And it looked like, maybe there were some variations of that in some other situations during the game. I'm just curious, is that something, how much of that is stuff that you guys have maybe been working on? You mentioned 19 games, like all the way back to training camp versus, something that was maybe an install this week, when you have that kind of series of plays that all seem to kind of interconnect.
Yeah, sure. Some of them we've worked on before. You always add a little wrinkle here and there to them as you go, and you feel the comfort of how the plays being executed in practice. So, but we've experimented with those all the way back to the off season and into camp. I would tell you that Coach Heck does a great job with the run game and putting that together, and so I've always mentioned that he gets everybody involved, but he comes up with some pretty good things there. So my hat goes off to him.
We'll go next to Jesse. Go ahead, Jesse.
Hey, Andy, I know you said after the game last night that the 3rd and 9, the pass to Piran, you guys had a timeout to kind of talk things over. Can you just talk through the thought process of that play call?
Yeah, so on that, Jesse, we go through and we look at this before the game, like if it comes down to a 3rd down or 4th down and games on the line, we talk to the quarterbacks about it, the coaches talk about it. And that was kind of our number one option there as a go-to play for this game. And it was just a matter of hoping that they'd be in the right coverage for that play. So it worked out okay that way. But Matt spends endless time going through all of that with the guys. And you start on Tuesdays and you kind of refine it down to till you get to the game. So, we just brought the guys over, calm the storm just a little bit and talk to them about, make sure everybody was right on their assignments,
Let's go next to Sam McDowell.
Hey, Sid, he just answered my question. Thanks, Andy.
Awesome.
Come on, Sam, you got to have another one.
Let's go to Vahe. Go ahead, Vahe.
I'll come in with 2 just to help you out, Andy. Hey, congratulations again. One thing, Andy, I wanted to ask is just about a lot of competitors seem to need extra sources of motivation, extra things to push them. You always seem to very much focus on the moment and process. And is that true? And if so, where does that ability come from for that to motivate you?
Yeah, well, listen, I think all the guys want to do well. I take that for, maybe for granted. the guys don't want to be embarrassed out there. So as coaches, it's our responsibility to teach them, to put them in the best positions for them to be successful. And this is their living that they're working at. And so, you hope they can hang on for a while and take advantage of that part. And then Brett Veach does a great job of bringing guys in that kind of have that attitude, that want to attitude. And I think that's very important. It's an important part of the process. And, we're fortunate to have a bunch of guys that kind of feel that way. And at the same time, they feed off of each other, which is also important.
And am I right, Andy, that the journey and the process, those parts of this fulfill you as much as anything else about the job?
Yeah, I mean, I like to teach, and I think if you're going to be a coach, you got to be a teacher first. And there's a lot that goes into that. It's not just knowing your stuff, but how it's presented and the trust that you have in the guys, and then the work that goes into each play. I mean, the detail and work and that these coaches put in, I think is important. But when we see success, we enjoy that. I enjoy that. I enjoy seeing the guys go out and do something good. I'm happy for them because I know the time and the effort that went into it. And there's an aptitude part of that, It's kind of like that dog right there, by well trained.
Let's go next to Nate. Go ahead, Nate.
Hello, Andy. Considering the performance that Xavier Worthy had last night, what do you feel is the most he's improved at, in particular the second half of the season?
I was actually talking to his mom about that after the game. I mean, the kid every week better and better and better, and he's really put together a nice half of the season. The second half here, not that he didn't have good plays in the first half, but you could see he was learning in the first half, and that the quarterback was kind of learning where he was going to be and how he was going to get there, and then against all these different coverages that teams throw at you. So it looks like they're on the same page, and they'll have a big challenge this week or this next in 2 weeks with the Eagles. Their secondary, they've got a real good secondary there too.
Let's go next to Pete. Go ahead, Pete.
Coach, we've asked you about Pat in like 100 different ways, but here's another. Just his record and by extension you when trailing in the fourth quarter now is a game above 500, and next closest is sub 4. Just was wondering if you could put your finger on what makes him different in those spots that allows him to have success there.
Yeah, phenomenal player. Had a phenomenal night last night. There's no change in him as you go. He comes in competitive. He's going to finish competitive right down to the end. The pressure part of it, that when things can dilate you a little bit, when things are tight, don't do that to him. He kind of flourishes in those moments when they're the toughest, and he's wired that way. And I'm sure growing up in a locker room with his dad, was a big part of that, or at least a part of it. But some of it is just, innate, that's given to you. And he's one of those guys. The tighter the situation, the looser he plays.
Let's go next to Adam Teicher. Go ahead, Adam.
Hey, Andy, you were talking after the game last night about the parity in the league and how it's hard to win games, much less championships. Yet here you are, you guys have won 17 straight games that have been decided by one score. How do you explain that? How do you explain the ones who make these plays to win these games? And Sid, I'll have a second question as well.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of what I was saying there, just with Pat, that I think the guys, they kind of thrive on that. I look at Chanel, and he goes out the Texans game. He goes, "I'm gonna block the field goal. he tells Tobe that. Tobe goes, let's go. We can get he goes, no, it's done. I mean, that's kind of the attitude that these guys have. They've stepped up in those situations, and and that's a rare thing. I mean, it's these games could have gone either way, and no different than last night. And guys, they take so much pride in stepping up, and they don't shrink in those situations.
Okay, and also Saquon Barkley is obviously the obvious answer here, but in what other ways are the Eagles different than when you saw them in the Super Bowl 2 years ago?
Yeah, well, those receivers are been in the offense now for a while, and they've got good tight ends, they've got good receivers. I mean, real good receivers, and they've got a running back that arguably is one of the best in the history of the game. So it's and their offensive line, for all those guys to work, their offensive line has to be good too. So and then their quarterback is dialing it up right now. So whatever injuries he had early in the season, I mean, he's playing like crazy right now. So it's that's a heck of an offense, and another huge challenge for us.
Okay, we'll go through the last few hands up. Go ahead, Matt.
Hey, I got two quick questions, if you don't mind, Sydney. But, Coach, you talked a lot about trust last night, and it was a common theme amongst the offense. But also the trust that you have in Steve Spagnuolo and the trust that Steve has in his guys to make plays like that 4th and 5. How does that build? How does that develop? And how important is that in moments like last night?
Yeah, I mean, listen, David, Donald, Joe, I mean, all these coaches, Brendan, I mean, they're all in with Spags. They know the scheme like the back of their hand. Spags got confidence in them, and then the players have confidence in their coaches and Spags. And so that and they want to learn the system. That's a tough system, Matt. So you got to stay focused during the meetings. You got to detail it at practice. You got to detail the walkthroughs that you do, meetings on the field, and then most of all, you got to execute it on game day. But there's that trust, that whole foundation that you built with the trust. And these guys, they've got that. And then likewise, I've got the confidence in Spags, and in certain situations, I just know I don't ever run over to him and go, hey, let's not do that or this. I've got enough confidence in him and been around him long enough to know he's going to make the right call for the right time.
And Chris Jones joked last night that you would probably be watching Eagles film at 3 a.m. this morning. How quickly do you turn the page from last night and start focusing on what's next?
Yeah, he was off by a couple hours, but I've been watching it for a while here. So, yeah, I try to get back on it. Listen, it's about the game, right? It's about how you perform in the game, and the Eagles didn't get there because they're not a good team. The Eagles got there because they're the best team in the NFC. They're a great football team, and so as coaches, we got to dig in and get going and make sure that we can feed the players a good game plan for them. And most of that work, Matt, gets done this week. I know it's a 2-week period before the game, but once you get down to New Orleans, it's a bit chaotic. So you want to make sure you take care of business now.
Okay, let's go next to Todd. Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, Coach, you get a lot of guys who've been through this stuff. What sort of energy do you get from the new guys who haven't been through this? The DeAndres and Hollywoods and all those guys. What sort of spark do they give you that maybe you don't get from everybody else because they haven't been through it before?
No, that's a great question, Todd. I love that part. I went around all those guys, man. I was so happy for them. And just seeing Kareem standing there going, wow, this is unbelievable. Or DJ jumping up and down, who's been in this league a while and been through a few things, or or DeAndre, man, he had a smile on his face. It was a mile wide. So, I mean, all those things. P. Ryan goes and helps seal the game for us. New addition, and all that stuff is great. I mean, that's why you do this. That's why you do this as a coach. That's why you do this. That's why you do this as a coach. I mean, it's just to get to see those guys achieve like they've achieved here.
We'll go ahead to Matt.
Hey, Andy, congratulations. The offense putting up 32 points, the most you've had in a game this season. I'm wondering if that's a trend you've been seeing over the last few weeks, and as part of that, just getting bodies healthy and just, opening up the playbook a little more once you get to this stage in the season.
Yeah, sure. Well, it was good. It was a good day to get over 30. I mean, you knew that you were going to somewhere do that. And there was no better time than against that team because they've got an explosive offense. So, and yeah, you knew you were going to have to go for it for, whatever term you want to use, but there's certain situations where you gotta cut it loose a little bit. And I think we're at that point where guys are back healthy and they've been able to practice fast with Pat and then you cut it loose a little bit. Yes.
Okay, last two, we'll revisit to Vahe.
Andy, you mentioned particularly spending a moment with Kareem last night. I wonder if you could just describe what gave you faith that this would work out this way, and maybe your appreciation of his own circumstances after the way it ended here the first time.
Yeah, no, he called me. Vahe. I mean, he just said he wanted to be there. I knew he had changed. I spent some time with him at Pat's wedding, and so and he, he's got a good heart. Even when he went through his deal, he's got a good heart. So I had, confidence that he could jump in and help us. And I knew he wanted to redeem himself amongst the community and kind of get that part that people can change, and I'm changed is what he's saying. So I think that's been a positive.
Okay, close us out, Sarin.
Coach, I was wondering if you could give us a little clarity about the review on fourth down. It didn't seem like there was maybe a declaration of what they were calling initially. And then when the official made the call, he said the call stands, yet that would seem to indicate that there was a challenge, yet there was no timeout charged. What all was, did you have an explanation or were you aware of what all was happening and why they were reviewing without a challenge and what the initial call was, all of that stuff that was going on at that time?
Yeah, sure. They can they can do that on scores, first downs. They can do whatever they want to do with those. From New York, that's all part of it, and I think that's a positive thing. So if it's a close call, just to get it right, either way, I mean that again, it literally was a game of inches. But for people to know, Sarin, we have two extra officials on the sideline with us that are also wearing the headset, so they keep us abreast of everything. Every call, they're dialed in with the officials on the field, and so we have an idea of they let you know what's going on at all times. And so to answer your question, yeah, I did know. I got it. There were a couple other things that went on in the game that they worked out. That one just happened to take the longest because it was so close,
Okay, that's all for you, Coach. Thank you.
Okay.
Travis Kelce currently has no plans to retire from football, regardless of how next month's Super Bowl plays out, a source has told DailyMail.com. After putting up some of the lowest numbers of his career in 2024, many have suggested the Kansas City Chiefs legend could hang up his cleats at the end of his 12th season in the NFL. His whirlwind romance with Taylor Swift and desire to appear in more movies and TV shows has led to fears that retirement could soon be on the cards, especially if he lands a historic three-peat with the Chiefs this season. Yet despite moving to within one victory of that unprecedented achievement on Sunday night, Kelce, who has returned to form in the postseason once again this year, intends to play on in 2025, regardless of whether he wins a third straight Super Bowl in New Orleans on February 9th.